Yes, good morning. We're right back in the Hive studios of WLCN, high on the hill up here on Blazy Road, County Road 2250, just a little bit south of Mr. Ash's hometown, Atlanta, Illinois.
Thank you.
And,
Sally's on the phone.
We have, we have a caller, I believe.
Oh, he's okay. Well, we're going to be with her, with Sally Litterly, our Logan County Clerk, here in just a second. And one of the things that I particularly want to ask her about is this constitutional constitutional question. Ms. Litterly.
You better put a headset on here.
Yeah.
Good morning, young lady.
Good morning, and let me first of all tell you that I sat at my desk for probably a total of 5 minutes yesterday, and I didn't even look at my calendar, and I knew I had to swear in the Board of Review this morning, but I didn't remember I had the radio, so please forgive me.
I think we could do that, yeah.
Oh, it'll be tough, but we'll work on it.
So how is it going? Did you have a lot of people show up to register yesterday?
Yes, we've been extremely busy.
Good deal.
We had 2 good-sized voter registration drives, one being at Lincoln College and one at Lincoln Christian College, or Lincoln Christian University, excuse me. Both brought in well over 100 registrations.
Oh, my.
Yeah, and then yesterday, all day, we were busy with voter registration, and we've had over 400 absentee in-person and by mail already, and we're still out, 3.5 weeks before the election.
Good deal.
So, in general, a presidential will bring us somewhere in the area of 700 to 800 absentee ballots. And I think we see a trend for people to start using the no-excuse absentee, which we have encouraged because that's the new law now. You can cast a ballot in person or by mail absentee. It doesn't even matter if you're not going to be here on election day. It can just be if you're downtown shopping or just don't want to wait in line on election day.
Now, is it true then that if Jean and I show up this afternoon, we'll have coffee and cookies with you?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. I'm going to turn you off my radio.
If Jean and I show up to vote this afternoon up there in your office, is it true we'll be served coffee and cookies?
Well, you know that...
At your expense, not the taxpayers.
Now, whether or not there's any cookies back there, that might be another story. Usually Judge Coogan stops by and brings cookies or cake a couple times a month. So if you hit it on the day that he's been there, you'll be in luck.
There you go.
Now, I want to ask a quick question, Mrs. Litterly. Say a person is working out of state and not likely to get back in to vote, then how does one go about contacting you to get a ballot sent to them so they can vote?
The easiest way for anyone, whether they're a student or working out of town or even at home and just want the convenience of voting by mail, is they can get on our website, which is www.co.logan.il.us_clerk, which is CLERK. It'll take you to the county clerk website. On the left-hand side is a button to push for election information. If you push the button for election information, it gives you a lot of information. One of those things being a sample ballot. And another area that you could push is an absentee request. And so you would click on that, and you would print out the form, fill it out, mail it into our office. The last day we can receive one of those is November the 1st. So that's the last day we can send out a ballot by mail. Otherwise, people can continue to come into our office and vote in-person absentee up until the day before the election.
Right. I was going to ask you about...
You missed a cat, Sally. The cat's parading up here. You missed a cat.
You what, Bill?
You missed the cat.
The cat
I know.
The cat is in here entertaining us.
Probably looking for me.
I was wanting to ask you about this proposed amendment to the Constitution. One thing that it does remind you of is that if you fail to vote on this, it constitutes a no vote.
Right. I think that's the very first statement in the first line of that amendment question. That's not something that the county put on, or that's something that the state put on, and therefore I don't believe I'm the best spokesperson for that, for the issue that they placed on the ballot. The Secretary of State was supposed to send to every resident in Illinois. Can you imagine how much that cost?
Oh, no, I can't.
Yeah. Plus, published in every paper. So, this Constitution question is costing us probably more money than what it costs for whatever it is that they were trying to achieve. Anyway, they were supposed to have the pros and the cons sent to us. Now, I haven't checked my mail, but I believe that that was supposed to be sent to every resident by October 1st with that explanation of pros and cons on it.
Well, that's kind of why we and the federal government are in such tough shape, is sometimes we don't spend our money wisely, you know?
Right. Yeah, well, the further away you get from
home,
yeah, from local government, those that you're in touch with on a daily basis, I think the worse it gets, is my opinion.
I agree. You know, on the ballot also, you have the races that have been advertising heavily. For instance, the Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, as opposed to the Barack Obama, Joe Biden race. And there are two others on the. There's the Green candidates and there are the Libertarian candidates.
Correct.
And then it says below them, write-in candidates.
Yes.
Now you can't write in Donald Duck. You know, we hear about that happening.
That's right, Judy, and you as an election judge know that quite well. Write-ins for any office that's eligible to be on the ballot for this election had to have been filed quite some time ago. So anyone that's a valid write-in has already been established. There are 9 write-ins for president, which none of them, I don't think, well, one might be from Illinois, but there are many. So if an individual wanted to investigate who are the write-ins on this ballot this time, they're welcome to call our office, and we'd be happy to tell them or give them a list of who the write-ins are. But you're right. If you would write in Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse because you're just fed up with the system and fill in that oval, that, of course, would not count as a valid write-in and therefore would spoil that office for you if you didn't get to vote for the president.
The fact that we have sitting in Congress a number of folks, all of them, to be specific, who haven't met as congressional representatives and done a damn thing in the last year, it kind of makes you wonder maybe we ought to write for Donald Duck or Daffy.
Well, I get what you're saying, Bill, but the sad thing would be is if someone did put that in there, then they would not have a vote.
Yeah,
for
disenfranchise themselves.
Exactly.
And
also in the legislative race, one of the candidates for state senator is Bill Brady, and the opposing party has no candidate, which is their right. But does that happen a lot? And it's always kind of sad, I think, when it does. Are we just all becoming so cynical that we think, oh, the heck with it?
I don't know, unless the sites feel that they're getting proper representation, which could very well be. Also, you'll see that Rich Brower, who is now our representative for Logan County, he has no opposition either.
Yeah, you run into it, just a lot of no candidates on our local issues.
Now, with the gerrymandering that took place and the fact that Senator Larry Bomke has seen fit in his good wisdom to say, I've had enough of this, we might address that district and mention the candidates that will be running to take that senatorial seat.
Right. We only have one. In Logan County, the way that it had been redistricted is that we are all in the same representative in the same legislative district. So our only candidates that we are eligible to vote for on the ballot in this election Rich Brower for state representative and Bill Brady for state senator, because there are no other candidates filed. And of course, the person, if they chose not to vote for that individual, they can just skip that oval and not vote there at all, and it does not invalidate their ballot. It only leaves what's called an undervote for that office.
That kind of, in a way, I understand the rationale behind that, but at the same time, the flip-flop side of that is that we ought to pick somebody rather than just abdicate our responsibilities entirely just because we're disgusted.
Sure.
But people do that, and that's human nature, and that's exactly what's going to happen in some instances.
Now, Sally, these ballots all have to be almost personalized because one township or village will have an issue that isn't pertinent in any other area. So how many ballot styles do we print for this election, this general election, in the county of Logan? I think we'd all be probably surprised.
Yeah, and this election is one that we don't have nearly as many ballot styles, and that's because we don't have schools, parks, libraries, municipalities voting. We just have county, state, and federal government. This election, I believe we have 95 ballot styles.
Isn't that
so that's 95 different ways an individual could vote all throughout Logan County.
And
it's quite a bit.
That's an awful lot, and it's up to you then in your office to see to it that the proper ballot gets to the proper polling place.
That's correct.
So that
people are what we call coded by the township in which they live, and then the differentiation between the people that live in those townships are based on what park, what library, what school district, what fire district, all those different things, water district that they're in. And so it gives them what's called a code, and then that's assigned to that individual, and that's how we know that how that individual should cast a ballot and what type of ballot that they get.
You have sent everybody in the known world a voter's registration card. Isn't it kind of good policy to just keep that in your wallet?
Sure, Judy. I think that's a good idea. One thing that I noticed in regard to voter registration was last week we went to Washington Monroe and did a mock election for the fourth graders there at Mrs. Wonderland's class, which is a lot of fun. The kids did, they sat down, were election judges, they registered to vote, the whole thing. But
that is so neat.
Oh, yeah, it was great. But the interesting thing was, and we had this discussion, is that schools are no longer teaching cursive. And so when you ask the young person to sign your name, they say sign or print. Yeah. And so then that brings us back to the whole issue of voter ID at the polls, the way Illinois ID an individual is by signature verification. As you know, Judy, when we compare the signatures at the polling place on Election Day, their signatures on the application to vote. They sign it. It's compared. We know that person's who they say they are. So what's going to happen to our children later when they only print?
I never thought about that. How interesting.
So then maybe there will be some type of voter ID if Illinois continues to not encourage cursive.
How do you, excuse me, Sally, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. It was just something that we just thought out loud. That's interesting.
Well, it sure is. Maybe every table, every precinct is going to have a handwriting expert there.
Right.
Well, in that context.
Or a thumb, or a thumbprint.
In that context, why not photo ID? What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Well, I guess some people think that it disenfranchises others because the fact that they might have to go get the photo ID, and if they didn't bring it that day, then they can't vote. So,
boy, I don't know, Sally. That sounds pretty weak to me.
Well, I got to show my ID in order to cash a check at Walmart.
Yeah, really.
Exactly.
Exactly. Beautiful analogy.
That's a whole other issue that we could discuss. for a day.
Well, as I say often, not too facetiously, we're fair and unbalanced up here on Logan County's Fox News, Sally. I really feel very strongly about this voter ID business. My goodness gracious, we all know the massive frauds that take place, and it's not only in Cook County, it's all over the whole doggone country.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, Bill, in our small counties, and again, Judy, I keep using you as an example, but we have election judges that know most of the people that come in. And when you get in large communities, you don't know each other.
Oh, exactly. You know, I make fun of Chicago sometimes, not that they deserve it, you know, with their political processes and so forth. But how in the world would you be an election judge up there and recognize 2/3 or so of the people that come through?
They have more election judges than we do people
in
Logan County.
Yeah.
That's the berries.
And to that end, Mrs. Litterly, I'd like to ask, you know, we offer our citizens the right of franchise, i.e., the right to vote. That cost us a lot of money to keep that system going. What does an election cost, on average, Sally?
Probably in the area, well, it depends on which kind of election it is, of course, because the more styles that we have to produce, more different ways, you know, Judy was mentioning a while ago, how many different ways can you vote? The more of those we have, the more expensive it is. And the more it costs to put it in the newspaper and things of that nature. So roughly probably about probably $50,000 an election.
That get your attention?
And when you have nobody show up, as happens on some elections, and I shouldn't say nobody, that's pushing it, but have very few, it gets to be pretty pricey per vote, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had Lincoln City primaries that we've had a turnout of maybe 2%.
Yeah.
And those ended up costing somewhere about $20 a vote.
See, that's just sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a commentary. What a commentary. The preparation for an election, such as a national election that we have, your office does a lot of work in advance. Can you speak to that, Mrs. Litterly?
Oh, absolutely. We start probably in July preparing, or maybe even June, preparing for a November election. Anything from new registrations, new voter registration cards, maintenance of the voter registration system, to the production of the ballot. We need to make sure and double-check the spelling of all the names and make sure everybody's coded right. The advertisements that are in the paper, all the notices have to be timely. They all have a certain date that they have to be in by, or a first date and a last date. There's a lot that goes into what my 4 staff do for an entire county, and I really got to hand it to them because they are excellent workers. And in the meantime, as they're preparing for an election, they're also recording every deed, mortgage, and land transaction that happens in Logan County, plus all the vital statistics and tax extension and tax redemption.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. There's not a time when anyone is sitting in their chair eating a cookie, because it just doesn't happen.
Well, send them some.
Well, Sally, you may rest assured that I'll not be running against you for that job. I just don't know how you manage to keep all the balls in the air.
Well, sometimes we don't know how we do either, but it just gets done. And the good thing is it's a well-oiled clock in my office. I have fine people, and I always have had fine people working in my office, and I applaud them for the good work that they do.
Well, that's why they make this, and I say this not too facetiously, pretty sincerely, that this is one of the best clerks in 102 counties.
There you go.
Because that office is run that way, and if they weren't happy campers, that wouldn't be happening.
Well, thanks, Bill. That's nice of you to say, but I know all the 102 county clerks, and they all do a fine job, and they all work very hard, and they all have the same feeling, which is, you know, we have a job to do, and we do our best to get that job done.
Is there any are there any pitfalls or anything that people ought to know about? Is there any issues on this amendments, items, and so forth? Are there any specific things that you'd like to call to their attention, Mrs. Litterly?
No, I guess the only thing is that people need to make sure they vote both sides of the ballot, which it is on 2 sides. Sometimes people will go into the booth, vote one side, and come back out and say, I didn't see that referenda on the ballot. Well, they forgot to turn it over, and it's already gone through the machine, so you don't get a second chance. So that's one thing I would encourage, to make sure that people vote both sides of the ballot. The other thing I would encourage is, if you don't want to wait in line, which now we've reduced our precincts from 45 to 29, and that's quite a reduction, and that will make for somewhat of a line on Election Day, especially in a presidential, where we see more people come out to vote. And so I would encourage people to get online, print off absentee requests, send it in, vote at your leisure at home, maybe after you watched a debate or had a discussion with your spouse or your children, and you could vote together if you want to. Whatever you want to do, but I encourage them to get a ballot or come into our office and vote in person absentee. Early voting starts October 22nd, which in Logan County, early voting and absentee, absentee are pretty much the same, except with early voting you have to show your ID, which I know it sounds a little strange, but early voting is mostly for larger communities that have early voting sites in their malls and grocery stores and things like that.
You know, I hope I'm not offending you at all, but because I wouldn't want to do that. But do you think that we're opening ourselves up as a society to a possibility for tampering by making it so easy for the voter?
You mean for those that offer early voting sites?
Well, yes.
Well, those that I do know that have early voting, it's election judges that are given that commission to do the early voting site. And it is run exactly like it is at a polling place. And they're connected to the county clerk's office, so by electronics, so they know what style of ballot that person gets, and they also know if that person's registered to vote. So I don't think that encourages that, but what I wouldn't want to lean toward is any type of electronic voting in which we vote by email or anything on the internet. That's something that
that's
I think
a step too far.
Yeah.
Hey, Sal, we appreciate very, very much your calling in. We always appreciate the input from your office, particularly this election is so important, and having you a part of the discussion this morning is really an integral part of what we want to do for our listeners.
Well, forgive me for
no, not at all.
Getting mixed up. Like I said, I think I sat at my desk a whole 5 minutes yesterday because we were so busy. I was out front, and I saw Roseanne last night, and I forgot I got to swear in the Board of Review tomorrow morning.
So
and that's where I'm heading.
We've interrupted that. Well, we're going to close Viewpoint with this comment. Forgotten where I got this, but it says, our democracy was created by men who fought for the right to vote so that their descendants could exercise their right not to vote. That's kind of a sad commentary. Thank you very much, Sal Litterly, for our Viewpoint.
Have
a good day, dear.
Thank you. Bye.